everyday sadness and clinical depression. These are two completely different emotional landscapes, but, they get constantly confused for one another. So in today's explainer, we're going to unpack the critical clinical difference between the two, and we're drawing this straight from Thomas Alethea's really profound book, 12 Steps to a Good Life.
Let's be real for a second. We all have bad days. We all face disappointment, right? But how do we accurately map out our emotional landscape? Like, when are we just reacting to life's inevitable bumps, and when does a bad day cross that line and become something much more serious?
The book calls this the perennial struggle, and what that means is we all share this tension. Feeling low, wrestling with fears and desires. It's a completely normal part of being human. We aren't broken just because we hurt. However, knowing exactly where the boundary lies between that normal, everyday struggle and an actual clinical condition is absolutely crucial for our well-being. So, let's start with part 1, understanding normal sadness. Okay, so sadness is a completely healthy, entirely natural reaction, and it's directly tied to a specific reality or event. It's what we might call the blue zone of the mood meter. It hits when your needs just aren't being met. Think of it like an indicator light on your car's dashboard. It tells you that you've experienced a loss, or a boundary got crossed, or maybe an expectation just fell through. It makes perfect sense within the actual context of your life.
And the real defining characteristic here? Normal sadness is temporary. It has a source you can actually point your finger at. It comes in waves, and it responds to comfort, like talking to a friend or, honestly, just the passing of time. Sure, it might mess with your sleep or your focus for a few days, but here is the absolute key. It never strips away your fundamental hope for the future, and it doesn't disconnect you from your core identity. You're still you. You're just a sad version of you for a little while.
Which brings us to part 2, the weight of depression. So what happens when that feeling doesn't pass? Well, depression isn't just a reaction to a bad day. It is this enduring, incredibly pervasive state of being. And the scary part? It often lacks a clear cause entirely. You could literally have everything going right in your life externally, but internally, you are just completely depleted of energy and purpose. It's like this overarching shadow that dims absolutely everything else.
This quote from the text really nails it. Depression is fundamentally an erosion of who you are. It's not just feeling bad about a specific event, it's feeling totally disconnected from your own life. That total loss of energy, purpose, and identity, that changes the whole game.
This all-encompassing condition often drags along what psychologists call the 3 Ps. You've got personalization, where you blame yourself for everything, pervasiveness, where literally every part of life feels ruined, and permanence, where you genuinely believe it's never going to get better. When you look at these symptoms, it becomes so obvious that they fundamentally require a different approach than a temporary bad mood. We aren't dealing with a mindset issue here, it's a profound health issue. Let's move to part 3, spotting the difference. We really need to draw a hard line between a passing emotion and a pervasive medical condition. On one side, we have sadness, a totally healthy, functional response to life's unavoidable pains. It's temporary, it's event-driven, and it leaves your hope intact. But on the other side, depression is a systemic drain on your physical and emotional resources. It lacks a clear cause, it strips away your identity, and it literally distorts your perception of reality.
I want you to think of it this way, because this analogy is just perfect. Sadness is like a passing thunderstorm. It might be super loud, it might force you inside for a bit, but eventually it clears up and the sun comes back out. Depression, though, depression is a harsh, unending winter that fundamentally alters the landscape. It is a persistent, changing climate.
And that leads us to our final section, part 4, how to respond. Listen, you wouldn't use an umbrella to survive a 6-month blizzard, right? Because these are 2 totally different emotional states. The tools we use to deal with them have to be completely different too. For normal sadness, the book gives us this incredibly practical toolkit called RADAR. It stands for reflect, describe, and respond. The trick here is neutrally describing your emotions without adding any judgment or self-blame, which stops you from spiraling into self-criticism. So instead of saying, "Oh, I'm such a failure," you train yourself to say, "I am feeling disappointed right now because this specific event didn't go my way." That simple, neutral description, it makes the sadness manageable. And alongside RADAR, there are some highly effective, totally actionable daily habits that help ease the natural sting of a disappointment. We're talking about the basics here. Prioritizing consistent sleep, eating actual nourishing food, moving your body, or just venting to a trusted friend.
These are the ways we ride out that passing weather of everyday sadness. They help you process the emotion so it doesn't get trapped inside.
But if we're dealing with depression, we absolutely must shift our strategy. A nice walk in the park isn't going to fix a persistent climate change in your brain. You have to pivot toward professional treatments. That means things like cognitive behavioral therapy or sitting down with a healthcare provider to discuss medications. And why is that? Because you're often dealing with underlying neurochemical imbalances. You need structured professional support and a really strong network to rebuild your baseline.
I really want you to hear me on this one. Acknowledging that you need a doctor or a therapist for depression is exactly the same thing as seeing a doctor for a broken bone. Mental health issues are not moral failings. You can't just think your way out of clinical depression any more than you can think your way out of a fractured arm. It is a medical condition, which means it requires a medical response. It is never, ever a sign of weakness.
So I want to leave you with this thought to reflect on today. Take a good, honest look at your own emotional landscape. Are you just waiting out a passing storm right now? Or have you been trying to survive a completely new climate without the proper gear? Because truly understanding this clinical difference is your very first step to finding real healing. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and take care of yourselves out there.